Welcome, everybody. I'm Ryan Hampton. I'm the organizing director at the Recovery Advocacy Project and person in long-term recovery. And I am so excited to welcome you to our Vote Recovery Rally 2020. I want to first and foremost thank our friends at Faces and Voices of Recovery and the many passionate partners who have joined us this afternoon or this evening, depending on where you're logging in from today on the Zoom. I can't wait for all of you to hear from them momentarily. They're just incredibly passionate and inspiring about this initiative. And I'm actually really excited that we have a special guest, Joseph LMS Green, who has a special message for us and is going to be joining us towards the end of the program. I think it goes without saying that, this is a historic election. What's going to happen in 2 days is absolutely historic. Our nation is in the middle of this catastrophic pandemic. We're in the midst of a massive overdose crisis, a long overdue social justice reckoning, and an incredibly fragile economy. But we know that recovery from substance use disorder, for recovery from addiction, is a daily permanent challenge, and that it always counts. And that's why that even in the midst of these challenges, it's critical that our candidates and that our elected officials hear from us and support recovery. We have got to educate. We've got to be out there engaging our communities, engaging our candidates, the people who want to represent us. And now is the time for us to be champions for recovery on an entirely different and new level. Now, Election Day is just a little bit under than 2 days away. Many of you are out there, you're calling your neighbors, you're knocking on doors, you're engaging candidates, you're making texts, sending texts, talking to friends. You've been out there registering voters. You're going to be helping get people to the polls. On Tuesday, you've been getting people to early vote. I want to say, keep pushing, keep staying out there and telling your story, keep holding these candidates and these elected officials' feet to the fire, because make no doubt about it, from the top of the ballot to the bottom of the ballot, recovery is on this 2020 ballot on Tuesday. Now, a little bit later this afternoon, this evening, I'm going to review some of the issues that we should be considering when we're talking about what it means to vote recovery and what a recovery-oriented public official or candidate looks like. Our work at the Recovery Advocacy Project, it's been hyper-focused on turning out the recovery vote for the past several months. But Wednesday morning, we will wake up with new legislators, with new county commissioners, with new city council people, with new assembly and state senate folks and governors and senators and administration officials all around this country, policymakers who will now be making life or death critical decisions about our community. And that is when the real work, the nitty-gritty work that we do, begins. So for those of you who are ready to join us and join me and so many other phenomenal partners that we have with us tonight in that call to action to get to work on Wednesday, I would encourage you to check out the Recovery Advocacy Project at recoveryvoices.com. We want to help you become a leader in your community to champion these issues that we all care so deeply about. There is so very much on the line, and every single one of you is empowered as the next generation of change agents in your community. So you've got to keep that heat turned up until every last ballot is cast. Then get a day or two's rest, and then join us as we move forward together, because it's going to take each and every one of us to end this overdose crisis once and for all. Now, I'll end with this before handing it over to our friends from Faces and Voices and Keegan. The day after I got out of treatment, I didn't wake up the next morning in a recovery house almost 6 years ago and decide that this is what I want my purpose to be. I was terrified to tell my own story. I was hidden under this cloud of of shame. And honestly, I didn't even know if I was going to make it myself. But as I move further along in my own personal recovery journey, I watched as so many people that I love and that I care about just kind of seemingly fade away. They were dying left and right. They were being turned away from hospitals and treatment facilities. They were being discriminated by insurance companies. They were being locked away for having a substance use disorder. I watched as this was happening in my community, and the key word here was watched. Now, I found my own voice in recovery, but I will no longer watch as my community and the people that I love are treated and cared for in that way. Yes, our voices and our stories are so incredibly powerful, but we have got to turn them into action. And the absolute most important action you can take in the next 2 days is to vote, and to be an educated voter on recovery, and to call your friends and your family members and get them to vote. Encourage and help get members of your recovery community and recovery allies to vote. Because as I said before, there is just too much on the line this year. So on behalf of the Recovery Advocacy Project and our entire team, I want to thank all of you for making time and being here with us in this community this evening. Thank you for the work that you continue to do. Each and every one of you inspire our entire team and fuel our passion for this work every single day. And now I'd like to turn it over to my good friend Keegan Wicks with Faces and Voices of Recovery. Keegan?
Thanks so much, Ryan. And my name is Keegan Wicks, and I'm a person in long-term recovery from mental health and substance use disorder. I lead our public policy and advocacy efforts here at Faces and Voices of Recovery, and I'm so excited to be here with you today. As Ryan stated, we come together today to elevate the voices of recovery and encourage everyone to get out the vote. We want to hear from you, and we want to hear about the progress that we're making in this election. So let's take a moment to share with us the progress that you're making as we answer this short poll. We want to know, have you voted? And so, yeah, I voted by mail. Yeah, I voted early in person, or perhaps not yet. I'm voting on election day. And we also want to recognize individuals who may not be eligible to vote at this time. So change starts when we take time to converse with others. Real impact is made when we speak to our friends, family, and colleagues. Yesterday, I was afforded the opportunity to spend some time with individuals who were several close friends of mine. And in the midst of our banter and laughter, as we relaxed on a Saturday evening, we spoke about the upcoming election. We spoke about our Black, Indigenous, and people of color brothers and sisters, and social justice. This small gathering of friends like me were white, male, people in long-term recovery, all sharing different beliefs about the current state of our country and the people inside it. We disagreed. We had discomfort, yet we shared that discomfort and we persisted. We challenged one another's perspectives and gave space to be vulnerable. Embrace the discomfort and embrace these conversations. Carry this momentum with you to the polls on November 3rd, and let us be active members of civic engagement thereafter. See, our stories and our experiences, like mine from last evening, have power, real power. Use your voice of recovery. Change happens in these small groups and in settings like we're experiencing here today. We gather experience from our speakers and the national efforts being done by the organizations that are participating in today's call. And we bring our conversations back to our loved ones and allies. Now help us welcome the voices of recovery that we elevate here today as we welcome our first speaker.
Thank you, Keegan. And I'd like to introduce our first speaker, who I'm really excited about, Kim Govak, who's the program director for the Center for Family Services Living Proof Recovery Centers in New Jersey and at Rowan College of South Jersey. As a woman in recovery and a national certified peer recovery support specialist, Kim is committed to encouraging individuals, families, and communities to seek help for substance use disorders and the associated consequences that affect the individual and society. Kim, I'd like to turn it over to you.
Thank you so much, Ryan. Hi, everybody. I want to thank the Recovery Advocacy Project for putting this on and getting us all together on a Sunday afternoon. Clearly, those of us who are on this Zoom today are excited about voting, have questions about voting, and want to continue to make our voices heard. So I'm honored and so glad to be here with all of you today. I'm a woman in long-term recovery. And for me, that means that I've been in sustained recovery management for over 14 and a half years. I do this and speak out for individuals who haven't learned how to use their recovery voice yet, and for those who are to come. I'm voting simply for, because it's a right and has been a part of the struggle for Black Americans in this country. I believe that I have an obligation to understand the importance of civic engagement and to do my part by voting. Why do I vote for recovery? For me, as a Black woman, it is imperative to vote for the issues, right, that advance the overall well-being of marginalized and disenfranchised brothers and sisters who are Black, Indigenous, people of color, or LGBTQIA. I and so many others here are so very, very blessed to have an advocate in South Jersey who has imparted to me and others, right, the importance of knowing who my legislators are, right, my legislators, and their position on addiction and recovery support at all levels. For me, that means my township, my county, my state, and the federal level. What do I think is needed for individuals that have a substance use disorder? Everybody's talking about it. It's what's been prevalent. We all know that people are dying from the disease of addiction. So what is needed for those individuals with a substance use disorder? To me, right, and the brothers and sisters that I mentioned, for me, it's always going to be access to quality treatment. It's going to be access to quality healthcare. It's going to be access to all of the social determinants of health that can lead to sustained recovery management, right? Including all the recovery-oriented systems of care stuff, economic stability, education, social and community resources, and housing. Voting for recovery for me means to exercise my right to vote, right? For those individuals, those legislators who recognize and understand that addiction is the disease. And these individuals also support the efforts to prevent, treat, destigmatize substance use disorder and addiction through appropriate funding, right? So if you're out there and you're talking about recovery support and you're standing behind recovery support and you're putting your money where your mouth is, yeah, then I have a high tendency to be in those people's corner. I have heard a lot of individuals who are in recovery, a lot of individuals who look like me talk about not voting, right? For me, that's not an option, right? The John Lewis's out there and all those guys who like marched and did all that stuff. For me to have this right to vote, it would be like a slap in the face, not voting. And for me as a woman in recovery to not understand what those individuals out there are about as far as recovery and sustained recovery management goes, I'll be doing this disservice to what we're all trying to do. If I don't vote with recovery in mind, all I'm going to be left with is the residue of outrage and complaining. So I am so grateful to be here today and to have been asked to participate. Again, I want to thank everybody at the Recovery Advocacy Project. Check out the website. It's got some phenomenal information on there. I want to thank Aaron for everything he's taught me how to do. And I hope everybody gets out and votes. We really need this. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Kim. We're so grateful for your words and participation in today's discussion. I'm fortunate to be able to introduce our next speaker, Courtney Lavelle, who's a co-founder of the Recovery Training Online. She's a certified recovery coach, an author, and activist in New York. Inspired by her lived experience, Courtney works to reduce harm and create systems of change. Please welcome Courtney.
Hi there, everyone. Hi out there in Zoom land. I am so honored to be included on this powerful panel of empowered women. I also heard Joseph Green is going to be closing out this thing at the end, so make sure you stay on with us until the very end. You don't want to miss that. So why do I vote recovery? I remember the first time I found myself at the capital of my state, and it was with a group of harm reductionists who invited me to help push legislation for Hep C. I had no idea what I was doing. I did my best to dress the polished part, all those 24 years of me stuffed into a button up under that cashmere sweater and those terrible shoes. I didn't say much the whole time. Honestly, I felt like an imposter. I felt like at any moment they would all realize I didn't belong sitting around that fancy table in that senator's office with all those smart people buzzing around in the halls. So I just listened. I watched and I was present, and I was awestruck by the brilliance of these harm reductionists I was with. True boots on the ground people from New York City who knew what they were doing. Man, they knew everything about the legislation, everything that was missing. They knew who supported it, who didn't support it. They sat face to face with these people who make all of the most important decisions and told them what they needed to do for us. Sometimes they were heard and other times they were clearly being ignored, but they persisted. That first meeting changed something in me. I learned in just a handful of moments strung together that I was capable of showing up to places I didn't even really think I was good enough to be at. I could at least be counted. So I started showing up more. I started being seen more. Then I started to speak up, and eventually I was even heard. And before I knew it, I was calling their offices. I was inviting them to speak at our events. I was being invited to really important conversations. I was asked by my governor to be part of his task force. Eventually, I even gave testimony to our state senate, which was incredibly nerve-wracking, but I did it. And I keep doing it. Whatever it needs to be in the moment, I keep showing up. What happened was I learned that I wasn't an imposter. I am a citizen. I am a tax-paying citizen, and this is my right. It's more than my right. It's my civic duty to be part of our government. I need to be seen. I need to be heard. I need to hold our officials accountable because that's how our system was built, by the people, for the people. Well, folks, we are the damn people, us. And if we can start showing up more on any level, eventually the system as a whole has to hear us. Go to your town board meetings. Stop by your assembly or Senate member's district office right in your community. Introduce yourself, call them, meet your congressperson, know their names, and let them learn yours. It starts small and maybe awkward and unnerving, but if you just keep persisting, the impact of these little shifts can have a magnificent ripple effect. Suddenly, you're no longer asking if you belong at the table, but what your legislators are going to do to earn their spot there, because we put them there. I know I vote recovery, but do they? Because that matters to me. I mean, if we can do nothing else, if you can do nothing else right now, if your first action step can be one thing, let it be to go and vote on Tuesday. If you haven't already voted, if you weren't able to vote early or cast your ballot, go out, be seen, be heard, be counted, because we matter. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Courtney. Our next speaker is Tina Harris, who's a person in long-term recovery after 30 years of addiction and has changed her life by God's grace. As a result of recovery, she's become a college graduate and an agent for change in South Carolina. Please help me welcome Tina.
Hello, everyone, and thank you, Recovery Advocacy Project, for inviting me to speak. I know I'm not worthy, and I don't know how I happened upon being a part of this, but I'm really glad to be here. And I want to talk to you today from a community perspective because I'm a person that goes out into the community and I bring recovery to people on the street, at tent cities and encampments. And the organization I work with, we meet people right where they are. And so we're meeting them sometimes in their head. So that means that we're talking to dual diagnosis people. And what I want to say today is vote recovery. The reason I vote, the reason I strip my anonymity so that others will know that I'm a person in long-term recovery. I want to stand up and raise my voice for funding. We need monies for recovery support services. We need a seat at the table. When I go to the street and I see that voting is not what the people on the street are looking for, their daily survival trumps voting. And as I'm out trying to sign people up to exercise their voting rights, sometimes I get a stab in the heart, but I continue to do so because we need funding for this opioid epidemic that we are faced with right now. I mean, women on the street. We need money for women on the street that find themselves, because of their substance use disorder, find themselves pregnant and they don't know what to do. And because the disease of addiction is rooted and grounded in fear, low self-esteem, and self-centeredness, the fear keeps them in a place of where they won't get help. We need services at that level for those women. We need someone to be at the table to speak up for that type of service. We need monies for transitional recovery housing. We need it at a lower level than the state. My local township, as the first lady expressed, we need it at all. We need to know what's going on at all levels in our government. There's money for help. But if they don't know, if they don't hear our voice, that we need somebody at the table, that we have this going on in our community, we'll never get it. There is a recovery movement going on right now. And as long as we continue to unite and we continue to stand up and raise our voice at every election, it doesn't stop after November 3rd. We have to put in our politicians' face, ask them, what is your opinion? What is your thought process on recovery support, from opioid epidemic to women needing help, recovery housing, access to treatment? What are your thoughts on that? We need people at the table that are going to stand up for us. They're going to stand up to destigmatize some of the services, some of the words that are used. We need support services, and we need the education, the advocacy, and the awareness that will help our recovery community. I'm really honored today to be here, and I hope that I have been able to say something to spark somebody to show up for early voting or to show up on November 3rd to vote for legislation, vote for people in office that are going to recognize recovery advocates and welcome us to the table so that we can be the pioneer for those coming behind us that need the help, that want to get into recovery, that are in recovery and need the support services, that are struggling. I thank you today, and I'll see you at the polls.
Thank you, Tina. Thank you. And you said a lot there that really, strikes a chord in me, particularly around local, because there's a lot of hyper focus right now on what's going on national and the presidential level, but like there's a lot of decisions being made and a lot of races that are happening down ballot that really impact the types of services that we receive and that people who are in or seeking recovery need. And these down ballot races are just incredibly, incredibly important. And now I have the honor of introducing someone who I get to work with every single day. And I am so grateful, and I'm going to let her share some of her story with you. Ana Maria Hernandez is, and some of you may know Ana Maria, and those of you who are involved in RAP will get to know Ana Maria even more after the election, and as we start to continue to do this work in 2021. Ana Maria is the field director at the Recovery Advocacy Project here in Nevada. She has been singularly focused these last several months on organizing large get out the vote recovery efforts and the initiative here in our state. She has always practiced advocacy, and today she does the work that she does because she wants to give back and fight for the recovery community. So I'm going to turn it over to Ana Maria. Ana Maria, welcome.
Thank you. Thanks, Ryan, for that introduction. Hello, everybody. My name is Ana Maria Hernandez, and I am the field director of Recovery Advocacy Project. I'm not a person in long-term recovery from substance use myself, but I very much am a part of the recovery community. And recovery first came into my life when I met and fell in love with my boyfriend, Nicholas. He was a person in long-term recovery himself for years prior to us meeting. And it was through him that I learned about recovery, and he taught me a lot about it. Nicholas, who coincidentally his 30th birthday would have been today, he was very, very active in his sobriety, and he was very proud and very happy by the life of happiness and health that he had found thanks to his recovery. He was very involved, and he found his purpose in helping other people that were struggling also find that same health and happiness that for basically most of his life he found to be such a pipe dream. And after his passing, due to an overdose, I feel that his legacy to me was to continue doing the work that he was doing and to help other people find that same health and happiness that he was so proud about. Now, I cannot help people in the same manner that Nicholas could, but I know that I can bring change about thanks to my advocacy. Like Ryan mentioned, I have been doing advocacy for different reasons my entire life, but in recovery, I found that this is where I can do a really big impact because it is our responsibility to make sure that recovery is one of the issues that is on the table for all of our policymakers. It is our responsibility to let our legislators know that this is an important issue that they cannot just brush to the side. It is our responsibility to educate our policymakers about the needs of the recovery community, both for people that are struggling and seeking recovery and for those people that have a well-established foundation. It is up to us to teach the people around us the huge power that our votes can have. It is through advocacy that we can make sure that we turn out the recovery vote and that our legislators cannot just brush us up to the side. Because if there's just one or two people that are individually advocating for change all on their own, those voices are very easy to put down. But when we are a loud, visible constituency, all in demand of policy-based solutions to the mental health and substance use crisis that we're seeing in our country, we cannot be pushed to the side. We cannot be silenced. So we have to be loud, and we have to be very purposeful and deliberate in the way that we choose to speak to all of our peers. We have to push everyone to vote. We have to make sure that not only do we ask our legislators what are their positions on recovery, but that we also inform all of our friends and family about why it's so important to elect good leaders into office that are actually going to help us progress our recovery platform. So I encourage all of you to vote if you have not done so already come Tuesday. And not just vote yourself, but take all of your friends to vote. Take the rest of this day and make 20 phone calls to everyone in your network and asking them, have you voted yet? And if they have not voted, go online to our Recovery Hub website, which is recoveryvoicesvote.com, and search for their closest polling location. Inform your friends and family members about the candidates that you voted for with recovery in mind. It is our responsibility to make sure that recovery is a subject that is on the table, like Tina was telling us. So let's make sure that we get out our recovery vote this Tuesday.
Thank you, Anna Maria. And I'm grateful, I know on behalf of the entire community and people in recovery and allies that we're able to work with you, and your advocacy into action for this cause is deeply appreciated. Thank you so much. It's an honor to work with you every single day. I'm going to go through just to take 2 minutes to go through some resources for everyone, and then I'm going to turn it back over to Keegan. So Garrett just put up, if you could put that on the full screen for me, Garrett, a few resources as we head into Election Day on Tuesday. It seems that it's not loading for some reason. Vote recovery. So if you're looking for a place, if you need to know if you're registered to vote, if you want to know where your polling location is, if you want to go and see what some of the issues are, recovery issues engagement this election, if you want to look at some tools for getting out the vote in your community, go to recoveryvoicesvote.com. Feel free to take a screenshot or a picture of this. It's our Recovery Voter Hub, and it's a great kind of one-stop shop resource for the recovery community when it comes to Election Day. If we can go to the next slide. I wanted to share some numbers with you all too. We did a poll here in Nevada, statewide, of likely voters over the summer. And the results from this poll were pretty fascinating because it went out to the entire general electorate, not just people in recovery, but actual registered voters. And we wanted to kind of determine how recovery is going to could influence people's decision in the voting booth. And what we found was that 55% of voters in Nevada, which is a very purple state, we're kind of what they consider a swing state here. We have a lot of Republicans, a lot of Democrats, a lot of independents, a lot of third party voters here. 55% said that they would actually consider supporting a candidate or policymaker of another party, right, if that candidate prioritized concrete solutions to our state's addiction and mental health crisis. That's a big deal. That is something that policymakers, it should push policymakers and legislators more forward in respect to talking about this issue and coming up with concrete plans. And that's what we need to be helping them to do. 79% of voters believe that stigma, or what I like to call, the stigma is kind of a nice word for discrimination and prejudice, right? But 79% said that stigma has an impact on someone's likelihood to seek the support that they need. 68% of voters in our state here in Nevada said that judges, the judicial system, should have more discretion when it comes to alternative sentencing, when it comes to substance use disorder and mental health. Next slide. So recovery voter education. This is all available on the Recovery Voter Hub. Again, if you just go to recoveryvoices.com/vote, or there's a longer URL down here, you can take a picture of it. People ask me, what does vote recovery mean, right? Like, what does that mean? Does that mean you're just voting for someone to be in recovery? You're just voting for recovery support services? No, vote recovery means all of this, right? So when we ask people to vote recovery, we're asking them to assess where candidates and policymakers stand on access to healthcare, reentry programs, recovery support, criminal justice reform, record expungement, racial equity, family support, mental health, veteran affairs, LGBTQA+, mass incarceration, Medicaid expansion, affordable housing, voter restoration, ending the drug war, overdose awareness, homelessness, insurance discrimination, vote recovery. You know, these are just a few of the issues engagement pieces for vote recovery. And we need to evaluate the people we vote for and elect to represent our community based on many of these key points. Are they going to be an ally with us on these issues? These are our key issues when we move in to 2021. Next slide, please. Get out the vote. Anna Maria just gave, and you can see there's Anna Maria knocking on a door right there, talking to voters. What are some of the things that we could be doing these last 48 hours, right? A lot of people have already voted, but there's still more people to get to the ballot box. Relational organizing tactics. If you want to learn more about that, you know, join us at Recovery Advocacy Project. We provide those trainings, but relational organizing tactics means at this point in the game, the best thing you can do is talk to people who you have a relationship with, right? That means your friends, your recovery community, your family members, people that you work with. We've been doing a lot of work in recovery housing, you know, in recovery homes and having these discussions, asking people in recovery homes, do they need a ride to the polls? A lot of states allow same-day voter registration, right? If you live in a state that has same-day voter registration, you know, head down to a recovery house maybe and go see if there's a bunch of people there who may not be registered to vote and bring them to the polls, you know, get them out to vote. We also are educating the general electorate about the issues that are important to our community, getting people to the polls. But right now, in these last critical hours, the most important thing you can do is have these discussions with the people who are closest to you. Use those relationships. Next slide. This is really important. I hope everybody takes a picture of this slide because make sure that you keep your eyes and your ears open. If you experience some sort of voting violation or suppression at your polls, there are things you can do. These are nonpartisan resources that you can call from the Election Protection Hotline to the United States Department of Justice Civil Rights Division, the Justice Department Voting Rights Hotline. These are the places that you should call if you experience any strange problems trying to access voting on Tuesday. This is also up on our Vote Recovery Hub. And the last slide, please. And get involved. As I said, you know, and you're going to hear more from Faces and Voices of Recovery. There are so many different ways to get involved in this recovery movement. The Recovery Advocacy Project is excited to be working with Faces and Voices of Recovery in this work and continuing this collaboration moving forward. But we really want to provide these tools and these trainings to you moving forward as a lot of states start to head into their own legislative sessions post-election. There is so much work to be done, and we want to work with each and every one of you. So go to recoveryvoices.com, join us. And now I would like to pass it off to my friend Keegan. Keegan.
Thanks, Ryan. And it's so true that there's so much work that's available to be done right here, right now, up until November 3rd. And then once the election results are in, we have so much more work to be done from there. Ryan had mentioned early on, you know, we spend a couple days kind of resting and breathing, because this has been a whole lot for us. And I think self-care is really important to remember while we continue to tackle all of the advocacy efforts that we're surrounded. And we're fortunate to be able to have such great partners and collaborators through all of this process. And now we have opportunity to learn about some of the materials and some of the processes that are going on in these organizations and what it looks like to get out the vote. And one last thing, as we talk about getting out the vote, one thing that really stood out earlier when Courtney had mentioned, learn their names and make sure that they know yours. I think that both now as we lead up to November 3rd and beyond, those are really key words for us to remember. And so now we have opportunity to listen to a little bit more about what Faces and Voices of Recovery is doing. And so Emily Porcelli will speak a little further on just that. She's our marketing and communications manager here at Faces and Voices, and she's been actively working in the nonprofit field for nearly 10 years in a variety of roles, and believes that people can come together for the common good. And when that happens, amazing things occur. And with that, I give you Emily Porcelli.
Thanks, Keegan. So good afternoon, everybody. I gotta admit, it's been a rough year, but I'm feeling pretty energized and hopeful about today and about the future. With the election so close that we can taste it, we're just as focused now as ever about getting the voices and votes of all individuals accounted for. What we believe in matters, and what we have to say matters. And by voting and engaging in our elections at city, state, federal levels, we have the power to create that change. We're all for advocacy at Faces and Voices of Recovery, and I'm so very proud of the work our team has been doing with the help of the recovery community. This past September, we were honored to take up the helm of the National Recovery Month, and even during COVID, we were able to have and share all of these amazing virtual events and programs happening nationwide throughout the month. I encourage you to continue posting your events on nationalrecoverymonth.org. We don't need a specified month to celebrate all of our accomplishments. We can do it 365 days a year. So Faces and Voices is also working with Recovery Research Institute of Harvard Medical School and Mass Gen Hospital on the petition to Congress to remove stigmatizing language from national governmental agencies. As we all know, the words we use matter. As Ryan mentioned earlier, stigma has been identified as a barrier to treatment and recovery among individuals with substance use disorders. Research shows that terms such as abuse increase that stigma. So we want to work together to update the language and aid the voices of recovery moving forward. And as we all know, our work won't end on Tuesday. It's just the start. It's in our hands and those of the community to help those in office understand the significance of substance use disorders and support the wide range of recovery efforts across our country. Remember, if your chosen candidate wins, hold them accountable. If the opposing candidate wins, hold them accountable. We need to vote for recovery, for ourselves, for our loved ones, for each other. We need to support. At Faces and Voices, we've been hard at work with Recovery Voices Count. If you're anything like me, you always want to help, but sometimes are overwhelmed and unsure of where to begin. On the site, we have compiled lists of things you can do today, Tuesday, in the future. We have action resources, like how to identify allies, how to organize and mobilize like individuals, and how to best stay up on news and candidates in your region. We have actionable steps on what to look for in debates, town halls, what petitions to start and sign, what questions you didn't even know you should be asking. We have communication tactics, suggested tweets, Facebook posts, how to get the word out on issues that are important to you, and how to contact and chat with the media in your town and districts. You get stuck, we're always here to help you. We are a community and we can't do it alone. But together we do have the capacity to do amazing things. So let's do it. Thanks.
Thanks, Emily. Really appreciate that. And now there's two individuals that I'm really excited about that you get to hear from. The first one is Angelo Lagares, who's the founder and director of Latino Recovery Advocates, also known as LARA, which is a 501c3 nonprofit that promotes recovery services in Spanish and advocates to change policies in an effort to promote cultural competency and provide culturally appropriate services. LARA's mission is to create recovery community organizations in Spanish that will ultimately reduce health disparities among the Hispanic communities. Angel, welcome. Oh, you're on mute. There you are.
Thank you so much, Ryan, and really excited to be part of this and in this diverse, this is the first thing, this diversity in this panel today. I think this is the result of the work that we've been doing with inclusion in the recovery movement. And I was talking, with Joseph, I always talk to Joseph and I was saying what I'm going to say, why they should vote, and then I was thinking, in the 80 years on the war of drugs, I was thinking, and you put it out there, when you say family support, racial equality, mass incarceration, that we didn't participate in the 80s politically. We didn't participate in the 70s politically. We didn't have the right to vote in the 50s when they create all these laws, right, that affect, because the war on drugs is a direct war to the community of colors that have been affecting us for the last 80 years. I remember in 1973, my aunt, desperate, looking for help, and she didn't speak, she was living in New York, but she didn't speak no English, right? And my cousin had he was shooting dope in 1973 in Washington Heights. That was the war zone of the heroin epidemic back then, for people of color, Latino and African Americans. When you talk about Washington Heights, it's that part of New York, from 125th to 225. And my aunt, was so, devastated with the situation. She didn't understand about drugs. She had no support. It wasn't no support in those days. It wasn't support now in 2020. When we talk about health, why I have to participate in the recovery movement, why, we create LADA, because this is something, health, we got to terminate health disparities. We have to, and then the participation. And I learned to get involved politically, when Facebook community took me to Congress, in 2019, because I never participated in politics, right? But when I went to Congress with Facebook and I saw the relationship, and then with, Ryan and Mobilized Recovery, then I was learning, why I have to participate, what I got to be present, and not only in the advocacy movement, but local, to change the law that affect, community of color. We're talking about Florida, right? It's part of Miami that they don't speak English. And what's the law for 6 million people, the Latinos in Florida? 30 million people in the United States. It's going to be power for the Latino vote. It's going to be powerful this election, right? But where we at in the recovery in mental health and substance use disorder treatment and asset, nothing. It's no access to treatment. We don't got no peer support training. We don't have it's nothing in Spanish, like culturally and linguistic appropriate. And that's a shame, right? But we're working through that. I know, Faces and Voices are making the effort. We're making the effort today to be so diverse, And when Ana Maria was speaking, Ana Maria is Colombian, right? And I met her in Mobilized Recovery. When she was speaking about Nicolas, that kid, he worked with me. And I saw, and I see with my eyes, right? Hundreds of people dying of substance use disorder. Hundreds of people. I talk to mothers sometimes that they speak Spanish and they don't have they don't get support, they don't get the training. They go to the hip baton, all that old mentality of traditional treatment. They don't get the new, and that's why, that is working to create training, appropriate training, cultural and linguistic appropriate, so we can support families, so they can support to family members, so we can, it's the law. This is not something that we're asking, it's the law. Patient right. Every patient needs treatment in the language, and then this is something that we have to change. And to change that, we got to get involved politically, right? We got to be local and federal and how accountable. Why it's not law to protect people, 57 million people that speak Spanish. We need, when we have training in English, we need to have that training in Spanish. When we got and the advocacy movement, I think, is a start, right? I think this is a start. We can see it here, the diversity here, right? Kim, Carol, Joseph, we're fighting and we continue to work. Thank you for the recovery project, that giving us that space of creating diversity, right? But I always think, right? I always go back to 1920s, 1930s, 1940s. What was the life of people using drugs in those days? People of color using those in those days, how they suffer. And then in 1970s, in 1980s, and now we got the opportunity to vote. Now we got the opportunity to participate. And that's why I'm not interested in, I never was interested in politics, but I'm interested in saving life. I'm interested in creating systems that help everybody. That it's supposed to be like that, right? It's a human right. And I hope, I hope that from now on, the recovery movement continue to be diverse and continue giving us the tools to organize the Latino community, the African American community. When we talk about BIPOC community, everything is the law for everything have to be like that. Thank you so much, Ryan. You know, because I learned a lot from you. You know, like I learned a lot from the recovery project. How I'm gonna that I have to vote, that I have to get involved politically, local and federal. You know, and all those tools the recovery project has given to me. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Angel. Thank you for everything you've taught me too. Goes both ways. I appreciate it. I am really excited to welcome my good friend Carol Cruz. Carol is a woman in long-term recovery since 1994 and a certified peer recovery specialist coach. She's the founder and executive director of the nonprofit Reach Out Project in Connecticut and owner of Carol Cruz Coaching. Carol is an organizer for the Recovery Advocacy Project and the co-chair for the Inclusivity Caucus, which is a new initiative launched at Mobilize Recovery this year, just this summer, to increase the presence of members who identify as BIPOC and LGBTQIA+. The Inclusivity Caucus committed to build bridges and intentional safe spaces to end racial and discriminatory injustice and mobilize towards ensuring equitable access to addiction recovery support where resources are lacking for marginalized communities. Carol, welcome.
Hey.
Nice background.
Thank you. May the force be all with you all. Yeah. Oh my gosh. Thank you so much, Ryan. Thank you, Recovery Advocacy Project. Thank you, Aaron and Garrett and all those that organized this event today. I have to take myself off of this speaker screen because I just, there's just too much of me to look at. So, and I just want to thank all the speakers that spoke before me. I'm not going to repeat a lot of what you shared, but all the work that you're doing, fantastic. And I am so happy to be part of this movement, this recovery movement. I have a script over here and I'm going to try to stay to it for my 5 minutes. Actually, I needed to start my time clock and I forgot. But what I really wanted to address today is, what I've learned from people that have come before me and the shoulders that I get an opportunity to stand on today. Like Angel, I am not a politician. I'm not into the whole political stuff. I don't even know how I landed here other than I asked Aaron, I said, oh, I'm a speaker for this event. But what I do know is that I do know recovery and I do know the sufferings of, what I experienced, my personal journey in recovery and what I needed and what wasn't available to me. And what has really opened my eyes through this whole process of Vote Recovery is that where areas of where we've been lacking. I remember having a conversation with Ryan and saying that we have to do better. And just looking at how much we have to do better, whether it's on the local, whether it's on the state, whether it's in federally, we have to do better. I had the opportunity, as Ryan shared, that I am co-chair for the Inclusivity Caucus. Again, for myself as not only a Black woman of color, I also am biracial. And I've been told all my life I have the best of both worlds. But we know that during this whole process of election that we have so many sides fighting against each other. And my view was really opened up with also my mentor, Art Woodard, who passed away last month, who also shared with me with the importance of transformation. If anyone that knew him, he transformed your thinking, right? He was for the underdog. He and Jim Wolfen did a racism of well-intended and spoke to millions of thousands of folks around racism. And then that's what my issue is, and wanting to get out to vote. I do know my local representative. I do know my state representatives. But my question to myself was, what am I going to do the day after the election? So if you would all just kind of humor me, I'm going to walk you through a transformation meditation. And if you would all just close your eyes or do a soft gaze and take a nice deep breath in and ask yourself, what if who I elected doesn't get picked? How will I feel? Check in with your body. How do you feel right now? Are you angry? Are you sad? Do you have fear? Or are you happy, relieved of the stress of all these months of preparation to getting to the polls? Take a nice deep breath in through your nose and exhale with a sigh. And ask yourself, what am I going to do the day after the election, the weeks after the election? Who do I need to include in my community? How do I can make a difference? How can I make a difference and change in my community, in my state? Because regardless who gets into office, I have declared that I have a commitment. I took on this role as an advocate, as a change agent. What is that commitment? What is your declaration? As we finish out in this meditation, how can you transform your community? How can you transform the recovery movement? How can we bring more people into that look like us, that talk like us? How do we change the language? Those are questions to ask, but they're also action questions. So take a nice deep breath in through your nose. Exhale with a loud sigh, because I can't hear you. And I just want to thank you all for all the dedication and work that you have brought to this table, to this event. And I just want to end with this, that as a woman of color and peer, I've experienced many forms of racism. But I truly have to admit, I've been ashamed. I've been ashamed because I finally realized I am woke. And I ask you all to hold me accountable in the roles that I have with RAP and the Inclusivity Caucus, to collaborate with me so that we can make changes going forward, no matter who comes into office on Tuesday, because we have a lot of work to do. So thank you so much for being part of this process. And thank you, Ryan.
Really, really wonderful. Thank you so much, Carol. And it's great to hear and inspiring to hear from our partners and collaborators who have worked so hard to really make an impact in civic engagement, in voter participation, and all of the work surrounding diversity, equity, and inclusion that's occurring. Our next performer, as we continue to wind down our webinar or rally, webinar doesn't do this justice, is a person that I am an absolute fanboy for. Joseph Green is a motivational speaker, an educator, a professional storyteller, an award-winning spoken word poet, and a person in long-term recovery. I encourage everyone to check out his website at lmsvoice.com and his social media accounts. He's been an incredible partner in our efforts in civic engagement and learning how to tell our stories and our efforts surrounding diversity, equity, and inclusion. And with that, I provide Joseph the floor.
If there is no struggle, there is no progress. Those who profess to favor freedom and yet depreciate agitation are men who want crops without plowing up the ground. They want rain without thunder and lightning. This struggle may be a moral one, or it may be a physical one, or it may be both moral and physical, but it must be a struggle. Power concedes nothing without a demand. It never did, and it never will. Frederick Douglass. These are not my hands. They were bequeathed to me by John Earl Chaney, who gave his life at 21, stolen in the night, with 2 other freedom fighters murdered in Mississippi for having the audacity to dream a better world and actually act upon it. Their crime, registering Black citizens to vote. These are not my feet. They were fought and won for me by John Lewis over 50 years ago on the Edmund Pettus Bridge, baptized in the blood of people refusing to live a life without the rights and freedoms promised by a country they built. These are not my words. They were tattooed by Sojourner Truth to the insides of my vocal cords, hidden by a spell that stated I would not know this wisdom until the day I was no longer afraid to proclaim my truth, no matter the audience or the stage. Unfortunately, the entirety of my identity and the underlying intersectionality cannot be summed up in a hashtag. My struggle is thunder and lightning. Let the rains come. I cannot vote recovery if it means the subjugation or reversal of the progress that has been made by those that have come before me. It is not my progress to sell. I cannot vote recovery unless I first vote inclusivity. I cannot vote recovery if I'm not voting for equal treatment of all bodies under the law. I cannot vote recovery without voting compassion and empathy, without voting Black, brown, and indigenous lives, without voting LGBTQIA+ and disabled lives, without voting acceptance and understanding, without voting humanity and love, not as a phrase or a word or a hashtag, but as action, as movement, as sacrifice. I believe that if I vote all those things, I am voting for recovery. Hi, my name is Joseph Green, son of Henry and Helen, father to Henry and August, partner to Angelique, citizen of this country and proud member of this movement. I have traveled all over this land and have found no bigger hearts than those beating inside the chest of people who believe in redemption and have lived the lives to prove it. So join me, vote recovery, because power concedes nothing without a demand. It never did, and it never will. Thank you.
Thank you, Joseph. Thank you so, so much. And I want to say thank you to everybody who joined us for this last hour or so from around the country. You know, I think that we're, because I've been tracking, you know, votes as they've come in. I think we're on the cusp of like a historic voter turnout in this country. I think by the end of today, 100 million Americans will have already voted, and election day is still 2 days away. And I'm going to say it again, recovery is on the ballot on Tuesday. So if you have not voted, get out there and vote. And if you have voted, go make some phone calls when we get off this Zoom, text some people, get your friends, your family, your recovery community out to vote. And then on Wednesday, when this election is over, join all of us as we continue to move this movement forward. From the bottom of my heart and on behalf of the entire Recovery Advocacy Project, thank you. Each and every one of you are making a difference. Let's make sure we keep this momentum going after Tuesday night, after the results are settled, because it is going to take all of us. And now to close us out, I'd like to introduce my good friend, Phil Rutherford, with Faces and Voices of Recovery.
Thanks, Ryan. Following Joseph and Ryan is kind of a tough act. And I had some comments, and I know we're a little bit over time, so I'm going to keep this really brief. I'm going to skip my comments. I just want to share something that happened to me yesterday. I'm a person living in long-term recovery, and I was out with some friends in the morning, and we typically go to breakfast, and we do like a safe, socially distanced breakfast. And there was someone there that I didn't know, and it was a new person to our group, and he happened to be wearing some attire that was on a different political team than the one that I'm on, my personal beliefs. And so I'm an avid member of the political team that I'm on. But the reason I'm sharing this story is this guy happened to be a new sponsee of the gentleman I was sitting with. And in that process, we had lots of discussion, much like Keegan said at the outset of this event. We talked about some things. We didn't necessarily have the same opinion on stuff. But what was most important to me from that conversation and from that event was that person was someone who identified as someone in recovery. And it was critically important to me that person got the help they needed. And I think as we talk about why, right? So we've covered, you should vote, get out and vote your recovery interests, go do, and I assume if you're on this call, you probably know that, right? You're probably going to help other people vote. But for me, the why, and the why is so that we can spread recovery to everyone. And that's really my parting shot is, I think it's that we're doing this to help people live and help people survive. And one last thing on the business of, there was a slide that Ryan put up that had all of these categories of recovery, or all of these categories of what recovery voting is. That ought to be tattooed, or that ought to be on everyone's desktop, because recovery is not a one-dimensional issue. It's not like when I grew up in the South. If you guys didn't notice this, I'm a Black man in recovery, and my journey to recovery looked a lot different than I live in Minnesota now. My journey to recovery looked a lot different than theirs. And so recovery is not a one-dimensional issue. There are multi-facets, and there's an intersectionality to recovery specifically, and we need to be voting on those issues. So with that, I hand off to whoever I'm handing off to. Keegan, it's all yours.
Thank you, Phil, Ryan, the Recovery Advocacy Project, Faces and Voices of Recovery, our incredible lineup of speakers, Joseph Green, everyone, all of you on the phone, and everyone who's dialing in today. Get out the vote and join us. We'll see you all soon.
Thanks, everybody. Stay safe out there.